Hello and welcome, true children of the gods of chaos, to yet another episode of Warhammer Lore with me, GreyHunter, where we're going to be having a look at the poor faction that always gets shafted, even more than my beloved Bretonnia does, the Beastmen. Also, the second code for Attila Total War will be up for grabs, courtesy of CA in this video, so pay attention class for your chance to win. So the Beastmen back in the day weren't actually their own army. For a long time they were part of a combined army with the mortals who worshipped chaos and the demons who would pop in and out of the mortal realms and kick ass. They basically served as an alternate set of skirmishers and the like, but due to their lack of anything really particularly special that the warriors of chaos and the demons couldn't do, they weren't really a popular pick. So G-Dubs decided to split them off into their own army with blackjack and hookers. Unfortunately, being split off into their own army really only resulted in making them the second choice to literally every other bad guy army, unless you love a challenge. That said, I find them pretty interesting and fun, but then again, I played Bretonnians and I played Demon Hunters before Ward wrecked them, so I'm kind of a glutton for punishment in any way. Every Warhammer army has an inspiration, and the Beastmen are of course no exception. Most of their inspiration comes from the popularized idea of the unwashed barbarian hordes that stormed the borders of the Roman Empire and brought it all crashing down, mixed in with some Celtic pagan feel and the Greek ideas of debauchery. Think a little bit how those live rock festivals you hear about actually are, and you've got a good picture of what the Greek debauchery thing is. Committed to very specific goals, the destruction of civilization for the sake of wrecking things and getting drunk and romping rampantly, the Beastmen are pretty much everything that conservatives believe the hippies to be: lazy, shiftless, and only really giving a damn about the bringing down of society. In a phrase, the Beastmen personify the idea of anarchy. Fuck yeah. So their origins. Children of Chaos who totally embrace that heritage, the Beastmen come from the era of the Old Ones, like pretty much everything else, coming into being when chaos flooded into the northern wastelands. When the dimensional gates of the Old Ones exploded, casting huge chunks of warpstone across the land, especially into the dark forests of the land that would eventually become the Empire, the primitive men who lived there and the beasts of the forest became intertwined somehow, because, chaos, the power of. And what that did was it bound them together into a kind of freakish parody of both man and beast. Filled with the primitive drives of both, they entered a cycle of procreation to ensure the survival of this new species, and began their worship of the Chaos Gods. Beginning what would become a thousands of years long war against everything that wasn't them, the Beastmen began infesting the forests. On to their history. So not being a united faction in any sense of the concept, the Beastmen don't really have a history in the same way that most of the other factions, like the Dwarves, the Empire, Bretonnia, or the Elves do. Partially this is because of their theme. They're the horde at the gates of civilization, and they don't really have a society as such. So we'll be tackling this section a little bit differently to normal, and it'll probably be a lot shorter. So though short in life and not keeping historical records of their own, the Beastmen do indeed remember their past. They honour their beginnings from the hand of the power of chaos, particularly venerating the moon Morsleib, and have what are the equivalent of Greek and Roman orgies in honour of chaos and said moon. Accordingly, due to this influence upon their creation, the name Beastmen is kind of misleading, as due to the powers of chaos their appearance is not really all that unified, and they include things like centaurs, which are sort of centaurs on steroids, and minotaurs among their number. Indeed, the favoured of the gods among the children of chaos can and will mutate into things that better serve the gods, as do the more generic forces of chaos from the northern wastelands. As reflects the importance of the forces of chaos to the Beastmen, it's of no surprise that their magical practitioners, or Bray shamans as they're called keeping with the theme, are all but revered as heralds of the gods. Killing one, therefore, is one of the greatest offences that a child of chaos can commit, and we'll get to that a little bit later because it's kind of important. From their beginnings in the forest, they preyed on the tribes of men living around those areas, stealing livestock, raiding farms, and villages. In the memories of the Beastmen, they remember this time as a time of greatness, when nothing could resist them effectively, so, things were great. Until Sigmar Heldenhammer came to power and ruled the Unbergen tribe, uniting the tribes into the Empire, that is, of course. To the Beastmen, this time is known as the War of the Hammer, because puns, yay, and it's seen as a time when mankind, weak and undeserving as they are, gained far more power than they were actually entitled to. Naturally, as Sigmar united the realms of men into the Empire and eventually Bretonnia had the same thing happen, the Beastmen were forced more and more into simply striking out from the forest periodically. Hatred for the realms of men was further instilled, and like the Chaos Space Marines of Warhammer 40k, they took to calling this struggle the Long War. As the realms of men began to solidify their hold on the lands they claimed and their technological prowess increased, the attacks of the Beastmen became harder still. Stone walls, steel plate, and rapidly firing weapons helped to prevent the Beastmen forays from gaining traction, but it could never stop them completely, there's just too many of them. Even so, they gradually became seen as frightening stories and degenerate rabbles unable to even threaten the superior realms of mankind. Unfortunately, the powers of both Chaos and Beast are cunning, and even if they can't win in a toe-to-toe fight, they have proven a constant thorn in the side of men, and occasionally the dwarves and even the elves when they dare to tread into their domains, which they do, because anarchy! So as that history, such as it was rather short, we'll go over some of the more traditional homelands of the Beastmen so you can get something of an idea of how truly widespread they really are and how much of a thorn in the side of men they are. The dwarves and elves, they bother a little bit, but not as much, mainly because, well, the dwarves and elves are kind of a little bit better at eradicating them than men, unfortunately for the Empire and Bretonia. The Drakwold. A forest in the Empire, the Drakwold stretches across several of the provinces, and it forms a smaller part of what the Beastmen consider to be the Great Forest, which is basically all of the forests in the heartland of the Empire that stretch across pretty much a huge amount of it, you can see on the map. Hochlanders and Midlanders patrol the road through this misbegotten land, but even so, the sheer number of beastmen in there means that they cannot be curtailed. The Forest of Shadows. Again in the Empire and stretching over the majority of the province of Ostland, the beasts within have taught the Ostlanders to live every moment like it was their last. And with the hordes of beastmen on the prowl, it kinda just might be. It's also home to the largest tribes of Minotaurs because the Ostlanders didn't have it bad enough quite yet. They needed just that little bit extra. The Reichwald. Even the Imperial Capital Province is not safe from the hordes of beasts, and the province of Reichland, civilized though it may be, still must keep a watchful eye for the creatures that emerge from the shadows to pillage, rape, and slaughter. The Black Deeps. To the south of Blackfire Pass, this forest is technically part of the area claimed by the Border Princes, as if those guys didn't have enough to deal with, what with the Orc hordes at the gates, and the Skaven tunneling about beneath them. Now they've got the Beastmen hanging out around with them too. Lauren Forest. Better known as Athel Lauren, this forest on the southern border of Bretonia is not wholly claimed by the Wood Elves. I mean, they lay claim to it, but they just don't have the numbers to enforce that on the entirety of the forest. Though the forest itself does kinda help them out a bit, as we'll see in the Wood Elf lore video. They do a pretty good job of policing the area though, with their King Orion being pretty on top of things because he goes out on a grand hunt every year to, well, kill beastmen. Orcs too. Kind of everything. And now we get to special characters. It seems a little bit too quick to be getting here, doesn't it? This is what happens when you strip part of a faction away from another and just kind of throw it out there. Interesting concept or not, you've only got so much to work with. But, for their part, the Beastmen do have some pretty interesting guys. Gorthor the Beast Lord. The greatest Beast Lord to have ever lived, this guy's been dead for over 1,000 years by the point of the current timeline, in 2522. Riding into battle atop a chariot, and carrying the Impaler, a magical spear that was powerful enough to slay even the largest foe with a single thrust, and wearing a cloak called the Cloak of the Beast Lord, a garment that he made entirely out of the skin of Bra shamans, which is a direct affront to the customs of his race and a sign of his perceived supremacy. Claiming to be the chosen of the dark gods, in battle he was protected by a corona of magical power that shielded him or lashed out at his foes as he fought through them. In addition, he was prone to fever dreams of the future, and though he was not actually a shaman as the Beastmen knew them, the power of prophecy is pretty powerful when you're trying to convince people you know what's what. Though the tribes of Beastmen in the Middle Mountains had been united before, the scale of Gorthor's horde was so much larger, and he led it out of the Middle Mountains and into the heart of the Empire. Marching across the northern provinces, the horde ravaged Nordland, Ostland, and Midland, bringing them to the very brink of extinction and killed millions of people and his own Beastmen, followers, before the end of the Rampage of Terror. Gorthor died, but the circumstances of which are not entirely known, but even a millennia afterwards his name strikes fear into the heart of men, and that's basically just so you can justify taking him as a choice in a fight that takes place in the modern day of Warhammer. Though, with Age of Sigmar having happened, that's kind of irrelevant now. Malagor, the Dark Omen, known also as Crowfather, Despoiler of the Sacred, and the Harbinger of Disaster, because, of course, this guy's the high-level wizard special character for the Beastmen. Believed by his race to be the destruction of mankind personified, he's a feared force in the Empire. The Church of Sigmar itself holds him as one of its vilest enemies, and the warrior priests of Sigmar hunt Malagor actively. Chosen by the Dark Gods and given wings so that he might fly and terrorize his enemies, as well as, impress his fellow Beastmen, he has the magical powers of a shaman as well. This shaman, unlike most, doesn't serve a single chief of his people, instead guiding them as a whole, his goal the death and destruction of all the gods of mankind. Yeah, he really thinks that he can punch Sigmar in the face, but I guess given the whole end times thing, actually bringing Sigmar back to life, this goal might not have been the most unrealistic thing after all. All in all, this guy's kinda cool, and, considering how unevenly matched a Beastmen player usually is. He's got a lot of points to commend him as a decent choice for a special character. Goros Warhoof, the sire of 1,000 young. So this guy's claim to fame is basically being randy as hell, even for a Beastman. A Centaur, which as we discussed earlier is basically a centaur on steroids. He's one of the most vicious and warmongering of his kind, having ridden to war many times before and emerging unscathed consistently. Though he's called the sire of 1,000 young, that number would be extremely conservative, and he's even claimed to be the progenitor of the entire centaur species, which wouldn't actually be as ridiculous as it sounds, given the sheer number of sons he has, and I use sons loosely, but every time he rides to battle, he's surrounded by a bodyguard of purely his own sons. Morgur the Shadowgave, the Master of Skulls. A constantly mutating beastman, who's basically a chaos spawn at this point, he can also mutate the things around him, because of course he can. He, like Malagor, is revered due to his vision of destroying the world of men, but also because of the belief that his spirit is as old as the gods themselves, and has walked the land many times before. Considering that when he's been killed in the past, exact copies of him tend to appear elsewhere in the world afterwards, again, not all that far-fetched. It's gotten to the point that Ariel, the queen of the Wood Elves, is personally trying to figure out how to end him for good, and when an elf queen of the most isolationist set of the elves is trying to kill you, that's how you know it's serious business. Taurox the Brass Bull. The original Taurox, not that Imperial Guard knockoff of 40k. He's also known as Slaughterhorn, Bloodbeast, and the Brazen One, because he's just that badass. A Minotaur chieftain originally, he murdered the hell out of people as leader of his tribe, the wanton slaughter attracting the Eye of Khorne, who either sent a bloodletter or a bloodthirster, it's not really explained which, to go chat with Taurox about his one true lord and saviour of blood. Unfortunately for said demon, Taurox wasn't really interested in talking because he promptly bit the thing's head off. Yeah, he bit the head off of a demon just because he could. For a year and a day afterwards, he went nuts murdering everything he could find because demon flesh, and then he was reborn by Khorne's power, either in wrath at biting the head off of one of his favoured minions, or pleasure at the whole killing thing. With Khorne, it's pretty much a 50-50 shot. And what did Khorne make him? Well, a being of brass construction merged with his flesh and blood in an unholy union. Granting him also 2 rune-inscribed axes, Taurox was now a servant of Khorne whether he was really into it or not. Despite this seeming invincibility, Taurox does actually have a weakness, for the transformation was not perfect, and his throat remains of actual flesh and blood, though usually nobody gets close enough to give stabbing it a go. Moonclaw, the son of Morsleib, also known as the Lunatic Prince. Believed to have been born from the moon itself as he crashed to the ground among a solid shard of warpstone, and therefore a very special snowflake indeed, Moonclaw's insane, even by Beastman standards. Even the Beastmen, who are already insane with the power of chaos, think this guy is bonkers. Perspective. Speaking in tongues and with mediocre magical powers, riding a summoned 2-headed steed into battle, this guy is really just kind of a half-assed special character. But for a faction with so few of them, even the bad ones are kinda good if you look at them funny, so he's not the worst. Ungrul Forehorn, Blackheart, Horns Thief, and the Spurned Ones are his other nicknames. Even for a Beastman, this is one ugly bastard. Born with 2 separate heads and stunted for a child of chaos, he was a pariah in his tribe and constantly bullied by his fellows. Finally, having had enough of this, he lashed out, killing the chieftain of his tribe, and then the same thing happened to the shaman. He took their horns and he strapped them to his head, because of course he did, he's a little bit nuts, and he just went off on a rampage. Killing these 2 was more than enough reason to exile 4 horns from the tribe, but not only that, from Beastmen society as a whole, as much as they can be considered to have society, and so now he's a pariah in everything, and he leads an army of outcasts and mutants. He's actually pretty good at it though, considering, so I guess maybe being insane isn't the worst thing in the world. Khazrak the One-Eye. Currently the most powerful of the Beast Lords in the Drakwold, Khazrak and his warband have plagued the forest with an efficiency not often seen in the Children of Chaos. Boris Todbringer, the Elector Count of Middenland, has personally hunted the One-Eye on several occasions, on one of them, taking out the eye that gave the guy his name. In revenge, Khazrak lured Todbringer into a trap and exacted the same pain on him, gouging out an eye with his horn, earning the Elector Count's eternal ire, and gaining a 10,000 gold crown bounty on his head. Since then, the 2 have attempted to kill each other, but they're kind of locked in a you can't kill me but I can't kill you situation, and Khazrak continues to raid with what amounts to actually proper planning for a Beastman. And so here we are at predictions. It seems awfully fast to be here, but unfortunately that's the way it is. The role of the Beastmen is clearly that of bandits, so I'm really kind of hoping that what happens is they'll show up as rebels in forested regions of the Empire and Bretonia to provide a challenge to players of rebels that aren't just generic units of men. If they were really cool about it, like really cool, this is just kind of my pipe dream here, but if it was really amazing, what would happen would be these rebels would be slightly different, and when they took over a town from you, if they managed to beat you and capture a town, they wouldn't just sit in there and wait for you to come and take it back. They destroy everything in it, because that's kind of what the Beastmen do. They want to bring down civilization, because civilization is evil and everything that's wrong with the world, right? That would be amazing. That would be totally cool, because so far in Total War games, rebels have never really been that much of a threat. You kind of just use them for practice and getting experience for the troops that you want to send out to actually kill the other AI. Just a thought, but that's my personal hope and pipe dream for what they're going to do with the Beastmen. As for their army, well, it's a horde army, plain and simple. Swarms and swarms of basic infantry that's going to tie you up in combat, while the chariots and minotaur heavies flank and stomp you. On the tabletop, that was pretty much the only option open to them, but with the tactical situations a Total War game can offer, the potential for an army type that's dead set on actual ambushes could be really kind of cool and interesting. So personally, that's what I'm hoping their whole shtick is going to be. So CA, come on, listen to me. I got the plans. I'm the man with the plan. Now, on to the reward for hanging about this long, loyal viewer, the question for the chance to win the second code given to me, courtesy of the folks at CA. So to be in the running to win, you must answer this question. Taurox the Brass Bull's one vulnerable spot is where? As with the previous question, the answer is once again in the video. So it's not a trick question. You find the answer and PM it to me to be in the running. I mean, you can comment as well if you really want to, but the more you comment, if you're right, other people will see your answer. So I'd strongly go with the whole PM thing. I will draw the winner using a random number generator in 2 weeks from the date of posting this video, and hopefully you listening, will be the winner. So until next time, where we will be doing the lore of the dwarves and their wacky flying machines, as well as their massive book of grudges, I have been GreyHunter, and thank you for watching.